Okay, remember, you are the prototype. You're the first. Okay, and that's why we're making a big deal out of it. Mm-hmm. First of all, go back and thank your principal, because for you to have transportation over here is a really big deal. Okay, so that's number one. And then number two, make sure you thank anyone who's associated with your school, because when we met with them, they were all ready to do whatever it took for you all to be successful in this program.
Welcome to Let's Talk Live with Martin Yu, the live podcast bringing much needed community conversations to the table. Let's Talk Live with Martin Yu is an exciting, reverent, and educational podcast that digs deep into current topics, community involvement, and stories of our alumni success that only Martin University can deliver. I am Atia King, and joining me today is Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstone Support Services, Martin alumni, and adjunct faculty member Desmond Mathews. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you. Can we get a little bit started with hearing about your background, who you are, and what you do professionally?
So as far as my background goes, I went to to Indiana State University for undergraduate studies, where I majored in electrical engineering and member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And after college, I did engineering for about 7 years and then got into pharmaceutical sales. Did that for about another 15 years. And then after that, just my calling has always been to be an entrepreneur. And so started Cornerstone Support Services about 10 years ago and grew the company to a fairly large company, over 150 employees, multi-million-dollar company, and then caught the attention of some other companies in the same industry. And in 2020 was approached by a company wanting to purchase most of the Medicaid divisions of Cornerstone Support Services. So at that time, I realized that the company wasn't for sale, but everything can potentially be for sale for the right price. So I was able to sell the company and kept a few divisions of the company. And so at this time, we still have our Child Protective Services division, and we have our federal division where we deal with federal probation. And then we have the division still with Medicaid, with mental health therapy. So we're now a mental health clinic that does a lot of assessments. We do residential placement for Child Protective Services and so on and so forth. But just to rewind a little bit, after I had pursued that degree in engineering, I came across Martin because my impetus was always to be able to do any job within my company. And the only job that I couldn't do was the job of a therapist. So I went to Martin to get a master's degree in psychology, and that's how I came across Martin University. And when I got that degree in psychology, then I was able to become a therapist within my own company. So at least I would be able to understand what my therapists do as they go about their, execution of their daily jobs.
What brought you to Martin? What drew you into studying here compared to other institutions in the state of Indiana that do the same thing and have the same programs of psychology? Why Martin?
Well, and that's a very good question. I had looked at Indiana Wesleyan. I had looked at IUPUI and their graduate programs, but Martin, of course, with it being a predominantly Black university, that was one of the first things that drew me to it. I had gone to Pike High School for my granular education, and then for my collegiate education, I went to Indiana State. So those are both majority schools. And I wanted to get the experience of being at a HBCU, for lack of a better term. And Martin was everything I thought it would be, and then some. It was that feeling of community. It was that feeling of your instructors were there to help. And that is even what led me to become an adjunct professor, because, it was, we at Martin, we service a underserviced population. And I seen a lot of people's dreams come true. I heard a lot of people's testimony where they were like, I never thought I would have a degree. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Nice. So I know you said you wanted to be able to pretty much master anything that you had within your business, within Cornerstone Support Services. So, was mental health, did that become an interest after you received your master's with therapy, or did you always have an interest with mental health?
I can't say that I've always had an interest with mental health. I will say that it is an emerging market, and it's one of those um, hot buttons right now because people are starting to remove the stigma of getting mental health
Hmm.
treatment. And it started interesting me in the sense of once I began taking the courses, I realized I could relate to a lot of the things that I was learning. And actually, I've got two children, two sons that are in college at Ball State and IU, and they're both psychology majors because,
Wow.
it's something that's very relatable. And so, but for me, I'm the consummate businessman. And so I approach psychology from more of an administrative perspective. However, I do have, patients that I see on a regular basis just to keep my tools sharp. And I'm pursuing, my licensure. So I'm, of course, having to get those hours as well as far as the exposure.
And how would you describe just a day in your life and what you do?
That's complicated. Well, as a CEO, the majority of your day is basically making decisions and making sure that everything is on track and that things are moving in the direction that you want them to move. Once we sold off the several divisions of the company, then we, started the rebuilding phase. So that's where we are now, the rebuilding phase. So, I'm building a strong team of administrators now. And I feel like I do have a very strong team of administrators. And, I'm just trying to teach them lessons every day. So like whenever I see something that I think is applicable to the growth of my administrators, I try to bring it to their attention and share with them. And then, as far as the other tasks of a CEO, it's just like always securing resources. It's a matter of making sure that you keep the brand's integrity intact at all times. So that could be with getting involved with community. It could be with getting involved with different boards. So I sit on different boards and steering committees just within the human services industry. So it's a lot of meetings with people like that, and then just constantly interviewing. I think everyone knows the current landscape for employment. It's like it's hard to find good people. So we're constantly interviewing as we're, like I said, in the growth mode right now. And then sometimes I try to enjoy life a little bit as well.
Nice. It's always important to have that work-life balance in
Yes,
any
it
type
is.
of career path that you choose to take. With September, it's Suicide Prevention Month, and that means it's a time to raise awareness of the stigmatized and often taboo topic. And what we do is we use this month to shift public perception, spread hope, and share vital information to people affected by suicide. What has Cornerstone Support Services done this month, to raise awareness with suicide prevention?
So, it's one of the things that we've talked about. We have our administrative meetings every Tuesday. So we've talked about that in our meetings. And we just try and, as we talk to our different clients and so on and so forth, we're always on the lookout for any signs that, they have any suicidal ideation. And we've just been very supportive of any initiatives that have come our way.
With those watching at home right now or at lunch or in their offices, with your background in mental health, what are some signs that are in people who may consider taking the route of suicide? And how can their family or friends help step in to prevent that possibility?
Well, one of the first things is if they show signs of depression or hopelessness, that you can tell kind of by some of their narrative. If they're never happy and they don't feel like there's any future or they have no reason to stay on a certain path, those would be some of the first signs. And one of the other things is if you find that someone is talking in a way that sounds suicidal, and then you ask them, well, how would you kill yourself, or what would be the what would that look like if you were to execute the plan? If they have an executable plan where they're actually saying that, yeah, well, I was thinking about running into traffic, or I've got a gun and I've always thought that would be the way I would go out, or if they have a plan, then it's really time to seek help for that individual. If someone is talking about it, but they don't have an actionable plan, at that point, it's time to try to still help them and find out why they have these feelings of hopelessness. But like I said before, if there's a plan in place and they have the means to do it, that's when it's really, really time to try to get that person immediate help, as well as maybe try to get them committed somewhere.
Okay, and I received in college a suicide gatekeeper certificate, and I'm not sure if many people know what a gatekeeper is, but that basically is where you learn the signs of someone that may be considering suicide, and you can help them along the way. You can get them the proper help. They can talk to you, and you're pretty much like a safe space for this person to vent or get out anything that they need to without taking the route of suicide. Does Cornerstone have something similar, or do they have people who are gatekeepers within the Cornerstone Support Service?
We don't have any gatekeepers per se. We've got several therapists on staff, and so we all know the signs to look for with regard to someone withdrawing themselves from their normal day-to-day activities, or when you see someone, we're trained to notice if someone starts to put their affairs in order, like if they pay their rent 3 months in advance because they don't want to inconvenience anyone, or if they start, gathering all the things that they're going to need to make sure that when they're gone, things are still in order. We all know to look for those signs, but we don't necessarily specialize in suicide. We more specialize in addiction help therapy and substance abuse therapy, and then and mental health therapy for those that are disabled.
Okay. So, what is the most challenging thing with what you do? What's the most challenging part of your day, of your work life as a
The most
lead?
challenging, I would say, is the agencies that we work for. We're a provider for Child Protective Services. We're a provider for Indiana Medicaid, and we're a provider for the federal government. And so, whenever you're working with very large agencies like that, there's always a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. You have to be very patient. It's very challenging with regard to getting answers, sometimes getting results. But I know what field I chose, so I realize this is the bed that I've made, and I'm proud to lay in it. But those are definitely the challenges. With me being an entrepreneur and being the chief executive officer, I'm used to making decisions quickly, and we're relatively small now. We're less than 50 employees, so we're able to move fairly nimbly on a dime. And I oftentimes expect that with the agencies that I'm working with, and it's just not going to be the case.
And what's the most rewarding part of your career?
The people that we help. Like I said before, we do work with Child Protective Services, and we have emergency shelter care for Child Protective Services. And so we help the most at need and at risk children. When they're on the street, we give them a place to stay. When they've been put out of their homes, we give them a safe place to stay. And then sometimes you see that you make a difference in those children's lives. I mean, we've had one individual who was actually a talented basketball player, but he never had a chance to play team sports. And we were able to get him on the basketball team at Addicts. And he was able to be a standout player as a freshman. He made the varsity team. And as a company, we went and supported his games and just gave him a dynamic to his life that he had never imagined he would have. And it brought him a whole new hope with regard to his future. He's seen that he could do some positive things and grow, and he's seen he could get some positive attention and not always have negative attention come his way.
Nice. What advice would you offer someone that's considering this route and considering this career that you're in currently? What would you recommend?
I would let them know that you're definitely on the right path. Right now, mental health is in strong demand. So, I mean, I think a lot of people after the pandemic realized how valuable nurses are because the
Mm-hmm.
nurses were going all over the place. That's how it is right now with mental health. If you're a licensed mental health therapist, the sky's the limit. The earning potential is fantastic, and the need is great. You'll be in a position that gives you a lot of flexibility with regard to what you want to do and when you want to do it. And it, like I said before, it's a very rewarding field because you're helping people. And with Cornerstone, we're getting people that actually come to us for that help, and it's very rewarding because those people want the help.
What would you tell somebody, specifically a Black male, who is struggling with mental health or addiction and they are afraid to come get help because of the idea that Black men are supposed to be strong? Black men don't, have feelings. What would you tell them if they are, on the fence with, do I go get help or is it a prideful thing? What would you tell somebody in that situation?
Well, I would tell them that, to me, strength looks like getting help. Someone that has the mental fortitude to first recognize that they need the help, and then they have the self-awareness to realize that they need the help. That's strength to me. And I would also say that I have a lot of male patients, and the first thing I do is I congratulate them on having the awareness of themselves to actually get the help. I would also let them know that there's no shame in getting better. I see a lot of our athletes are doing it as well, and the stigma is kind of being erased from getting mental health assistance, and it's something that, as Black men, that we've got to get over. Same with going to the doctor. You go to the doctor. You don't need to go only when you need something cut out of your body. You need to go just to make sure that your body stays in tune, and the same goes for your mind. So if you feel like your mind is out of tune, it's important to go get that tune up from a mental health professional.
Is there any practices or exercises somebody can do at home if they're, overwhelmed? Or I know a lot of time people can become overwhelmed, just being overstimulated around certain crowds. What advice would you give somebody who not necessarily needs any medications or has to sit down with a therapist for an hour, but they just really get overwhelmed, or something that's kind of uncomfortable for them at the time? How would you want them to cope?
Well, one of the first things that I do when I'm talking to someone that is dealing with overwhelming situations, it's sometimes just sit back and step back a little bit and then kind of focus on what's good in your life. Focus on the things that you're happy about, and give less time to the things that frustrate you or that overwhelm you. I feel like we make choices every day, and we can choose to take time to smell the flowers. We can choose to reflect on our accomplishments. We don't always have to give so much time to the things that went wrong. We can give even more time to the things that go right in our life. And I think oftentimes, if we do take that time to reflect, we'll realize that we have a lot more to be thankful for than we have to be frustrated about.
I agree. What's a misconception that people commonly have about mental health professionals?
Well, people have the feeling that something's wrong with me if I have a problem. And there's not necessarily nothing wrong with you. None of us have perfect lives. We just all have different ways that we deal with the challenges that life presents. And so you may just need help learning and understanding how to cope with those problems. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. And to be honest with you, a lot of mental health therapists have therapists of their own. So it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It just means that, like I said before, that you're self-aware enough to know that it's become more of an issue than you had thought. And you want to nip it in the bud before it becomes something traumatizing or before you end up in a crisis situation.
Nice. Also, I had a question based on your professional background. What do you do to not dig so deep into those who you help, so you're not consumed with, their burdens and what's going on in their lives? How do you separate that from your life?
It's a challenge, because for the most part, my practice basically is comprised of a patient population that looks like me. And, I grew up with a single parent household, and I had a lot of challenges. So it's hard to not, let it become, a part of my daily struggles. But I still struggle with it. I think the biggest thing is there's so many different type of people that I deal with that it would be hard for me to try and project all of it onto myself. And I realize that each of them is so different that it makes me realize that this is just, the population that I serve. But if I'd be lying if I said it doesn't ever get to me, it does, and I think maybe that's what makes me a good therapist. And at times, because I do empathize, and I do remember that, I've got an auntie that may be going through the same thing. I've got an uncle that may be going through the same thing. So it's very real for me, but it makes me genuine and organic with the help that I give out.
And how can somebody reach Cornerstone Support Services? Where are you located? Are you in Central Indiana? Where can somebody reach out?
Well, so we have a West Side office on Morenci, which is near Georgetown Road. And then we have an office on the Martin University campus. And then we have a new headquarters, a brick and mortar standalone facility in the Meadows area that we'll be moving into very shortly. We're very proud of it. We'll be at 3949 Meadows Drive, and it'll be the headquarters and administrative offices for Cornerstone Support Services. And we also have a website, cornerstonesupportservices.net.
Nice. And how can someone reach you?
They would be able to call our office at 317-541-8748.
Nice. And is there anything you would like to share with the audience or with students, peers, or colleagues and professionals alike with your career, or any advice?
Well, the one thing I would share is if you're at Martin as a student, appreciate what you're experiencing, because it is an excellent university. The colleagues and the cohorts that I went through my graduate program with, we all stay in touch. There's some of them that have come to work for Cornerstone, and we're very, very glad to have them. We have interns that come from the university. If you are currently in the master's program for psychology and you need an internship, definitely reach out to Cornerstone. We're always glad to see fellow alumni come through here and help them get the help they need as far as their internship hours or any kind of guidance. And just, continue to support the university even once you've graduated.
Thank you so much. If you are watching or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, feel free to call or text 988 immediately. That is the suicide prevention hotline, and they are available 24/7 with advice and counsels. So if you are watching and you are considering, or somebody else is considering the route of suicide, please call or text 988 immediately. That looks like all the time that we have today. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Let's Talk Live with Martin U, Desmond, and sharing the knowledge that you have, your expertise with the Martin community. I'm your guest, Auntie King, and I'll see you the same place, same time next week, right here on Let's Talk Live with Martin U.
Goodbye.
Bye.